Hello and thanks for joining me. I am so thrilled to finally be able to do a quick book chat on Istanbul, A Tale of Three Cities by Bettany Hughes. I finished this not too long ago, and I'm just now getting around to being able to sit down and do a quick chat on this sort of hefty work of nonfiction, a biography of a city, Istanbul. This is by Bettany Hughes and was originally published in 2017 in the UK as well as the US in the same year. Bettany Hughes, I've never read anything by Bettany Hughes, but I've seen some of her documentaries that are from the BBC maybe, or some sort of British television. So I've seen some of her documentaries, but never read any of her stuff, and her documentaries are very engaging. And this was written sort of in the same sort of style that I recognized from her documentaries. So it was also very engaging, packed a lot of history into this slightly over 600 pages, because Istanbul has a long past. So yeah, I wanted to read this. I traveled to Istanbul a couple of years ago as a tourist, and I really wanted to learn more about, the history of the city. After that, I got interested to learn more, and then I heard on CR Flames Fan read this book and chatted this book last year, and that's how it sort of came on my radar. So it sounded really interesting, so I definitely wanted to get it read this year. So I put it on my priority reading list under the topic of place, so biography of place. So what I thought I would do, since it's such a big book and it contains so much information, what I thought I would do just to describe it a bit is to go by the table of contents. It's divided up into parts. And each part, really is an era for the city. The city's had three different names in its history that we know of. It has a longer history. Its history stretches into prehistory, so it may have had other names that we're not aware of, but we are aware of three names: Byzantium, Constantinople, and Istanbul, which is what we currently know it as. So let's just start off with the table of contents. So part one actually covers the years 800,000 BC to 311 AD. Yes, I said 800,000 BC because this area has been occupied far back into prehistory. This sort of area where it's located geographically, sort of where Europe and Asia come together through the Bosphorus, sort of by the Black Sea. And so it's sort of a place of that's always been relatively important in the crossroads of the history of Eurasia. So in this section, one thing that's talked about in this section that I thought was real interesting was the Egnatian Way. So in the Roman era, there was a big highway built, a super highway that went from Byzantium all the way to Rome, and it's called the Egnatian Way. And that road, I think, is still kind of there, but it was a crossroads through Europe, sort of the gateway to Asia. So part two is Constantinople's City of God. This covers the years AD 311 AD to 475 AD. So this is during the Roman Empire, the era of the Roman Empire, and the Emperor Constantine converts to Christianity and establishes another capital in the east, and he chooses Byzantium and renames it after himself and renames it Constantinople. And so it instantly sort of becomes a center of Christianity because the Emperor Constantine was the first Roman emperor to convert to Christianity. And so this is all discussed in this section. His mother Helena, who traveled to the eastern Mediterranean, looking for relics. Constantinople became a big center for early Christian relics and early Christianity. Then part three is called the New Rome, AD 476 through 565. So this section is after the fall of the Roman Empire in Western Europe. The Roman Empire continued on in the east, the eastern half of the empire, and was called, was still Rome, known in the area as Rome. It did eventually get start to be called the Byzantine Empire during this period. But yeah, really interesting section in this was the Nika riots. So I just thought I would bring up the Nika riots. They occurred in the year 532 because I thought it was so interesting. The Hippodrome was a Roman, sort of like the Colosseum, only it was a chariot races and stuff. So it wasn't a circle; it was sort of this oblong thing called the Hippodrome. And the teams of the day were very popular. The sports teams, they were known as the Blues and the Greens. And so there was a riot. The Nika riots occurred in 532 because these two teams, the Greens and the Blues, most of the time they didn't join forces. They were often against each other, I guess, because they were rivals. But these Greens and Blues, they permeated all levels of society, and all classes were either identified either as a green or a blue. And then what happened was the Emperor Justinian raised taxes, and this caused a lot of discontent. And then there was some minor riots, but then as a result of these riots, there were like 7 people that were going to be put to death, that were going to be hung. And as it turned out, the hanging sort of failed because the scaffolding broke. And then there was this mob, the Greens and the Blues, to rescue these people that were going to be hung. And then I think a priest affiliated with the Greens rescued one person, and a priest affiliated with the Blues rescued another. And anyway, all hell broke loose, basically. Rioting happened. The city was largely built out of wood, so it was very destructive and caused a massive loss of life. I think the Emperor Justinian wound up killing, this is strictly from my memory, something like 30,000 people in the Hippodrome to try to bring calm, or try to like put down this sort of riots. Just ran out of control for days. But anyway. All right, part 4, the world's desire, 565 AD to 1050 AD. This is a period of time. The Vikings also are mentioned in this. The Vikings interacted with Constantinople at this time, but the Silk Road, Constantinople became very wealthy because of the trade, between Asia and Europe. And then the next section, part 5, is called City of War. This is 1050 to 1320 AD. This is all about kind of like the schism between Orthodox Christianity and Western Catholic Christianity. And so there was a schism during this period, and this was also the period of the Crusades, which also impacted the city quite a bit. Part 6 is Allah's city, AD 1320 to 1575 AD. So this is, the Muslims eventually do conquer Constantinople after a very long and many efforts to do so. Ultimately, they are able to conquer the city, and it becomes a Muslim city at that point. And then part 7, Imperial City, 1550 to 1800. This is really the Ottoman period. Sort of the wealthiest part of the Ottoman period. And one section here is called Tulips and Textiles. The tulip motif, I brought this I brought this when I was in Istanbul. This is a ceramic bowl, but this is the tulip motif that was very popular during the Ottoman period. I've got my drawings for my remaining books on my must-read list that I'm going to, following this chat, I'll actually do a drawing to choose my next book off of my must-read list. So I thought I'd use this tulip motif from the Ottoman period bowl here just to do my drawing this time. Anyway, part 8, City of Revolt and Opportunity, AD 1800 onwards. So this is the very last part, and this is the last century or so, a little over a century of the Ottoman Empire, which actually came to an end following World War I. The Ottoman Empire was dissolved, and that's basically where the book ends. I just thought it was so interesting. I was especially interested in this Ottoman period, so I think I need to do some more reading on the Ottoman period, because I don't think I've read enough of that. Like the eunuchs, eunuchs had a lot of power in the Ottoman the governmental structure of the Ottoman Empire. The harem. The whole thing with the harem and how that worked to me was very interesting, and how much power some of these women wound up having through the harem. The janissaries, is another thing, another aspect of, so there were sort of these bureaucrats, I guess you could say, of the Ottoman era that were actually started out as being slaves. So Christian slaves. And slavery is talked about here, especially in the section part 7, the 1550 to 1800, because slavery was practiced through the Ottoman Empire, especially from the Caucasus area, like current Georgia. This area, Georgia, the country, not Georgia, the U.S. state, but also the Slavic areas of like Russia. I also thought it was really interesting how during the Byzantine period, how the Orthodox Christianity of Constantinople really impacted Russia, and the interaction, the cultural interaction between Russia, the development of Russia, and the Byzantine Empire of that period. So I thought that was real cool, and I'd like to kind of read more about that in the future, I think. But overall, I really did enjoy this. It is kind of a whopper, a little over 600 pages. Bettany Hughes, if you've ever seen any of her documentaries, sometimes she'll take these dramatic pauses when she's going to end a scene, and she'll say something really dramatic, and then she'll dramatically turn and walk off camera. This chapters are kind of structured that way. They often end on kind of a dramatic note, and but it really made it really engaging. It did take me a while to get through this, just because it's so much history to get through, but I'm so glad that I finally did get it read. So yeah, so what is my next book? Well, what I'm currently reading. So what I'm currently reading is Books and Readers in the Early Church, A History of Early Christian Texts by Harry Y. Gamble. I'm about 2/3 of the way through with this, so I should be finished with this fairly soon. I love this history of early Christianity, also, this history period of Rome. I love this sort of time period, and this has been really interesting as far as books go, sort of the history of books in Europe, because the development of Christianity really changed the intellectual life of Europe in a lot of ways, and this book sort of explains how that information got disseminated across the Roman Empire of the time, both the Eastern Roman Empire of the Eastern Mediterranean, as well as Rome itself, and points west like Gaul. So yeah, love that. Should have a chat on that coming up fairly soon. So what is my next book, my next read going to be? Let me let the random universe choose my next read off of my priority reading list. My next chapter will probably wind up being my book to film club. We're reading The Lord of the Flies, so I'll have that coming up next week. But for my priority reading, the next thing on my list is going to be, wow, Joseph and His Brothers. Joseph and His Brothers. I've kind of been dreading this one coming up, because here's why. 1,500 pages of Joseph and His Brothers. This is all 4 books of Joseph and His Brothers. I was determined to read this year. This is by Thomas Mann. This is the first Thomas Mann that I've read, so this is going to be my year to get Joseph and His Brothers read. And yeah, I'm going to dive into this, and I'm going to get these 1,500 pages read. Hopefully, it won't take me the rest of the year to do so, because I have about 7 other books on my priority reading list that I need to get to. But Joseph and His Brothers will be my next priority read. So I will also have an opera haul coming up. My opera for the 2018-2019 season has been kind of determined with my season tickets that I've bought, so budgeted for. So I will have a haul on that coming up also in the relatively near future. So another souvenir of mine from Istanbul was this. This is a teacup from Istanbul. Also, they serve coffee in these. So I'm going to relax and have a little bit of tea. And until next time, happy reading. Take care. Bye.